Hey everyone, welcome to the episode. Today we have on Sean Cooper, and Sean Cooper is a mortgage broker based in Toronto, but he serves all of Canada, coast to coast. Sean, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Robin.
So Sean, you were made famous years ago, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, or possibly even longer, for paying off your mortgage. You own a home in Toronto. You paid it off though in a very quick 3 years. How the heck did you pay it off that fast?
Well, technically 3 years and 2 months, but who's really counting there? But yes, I've got a few of the things in the background there. You can see some of the articles in the background there. But yes, I haven't told my story for a while here, so I might be a bit rusty. But yeah, essentially what happened was I ended up buying my house in 2012, the summer of 2012. I paid $425,000 for my house, which is in the city of Toronto. It was a starter home, like a bungalow with a basement apartment there. Now, I know home prices have gone up significantly since then. Like my house is probably worth at least 1.1 million, so it's over doubled in that period of time there. But yeah, so I bought my house and I ended up putting a significant amount of money down on the property, well over 20% down on the property because I basically like saved as much of my money as possible. So that left me with like a mortgage of about $250,000, which I know by today's standards was pretty small. Being a mortgage broker, I'm regularly seeing $700,000, $800,000 mortgages or more. So those were definitely different times back then. But yeah, basically worked really hard over those 3 years. I ended up living in the basement of my house and renting out the upstairs to earn even more rent. That was one of the strategies. Also, besides my full-time job, I also did several side hustles, including being a freelance writer, where I was able to earn significant extra income from that. And I just live frugally during that time period here. It's not like I was on a craft dinner diet or anything like that. Like some people like to exaggerate the stories and look in my cupboard and see the craft dinner and think that I eat that at every meal, but that's definitely not the case. I maybe had it like once or twice a week. I definitely don't think it's healthy to eat that every single day. But yeah, I didn't do anything extravagant like go on any big trips or anything like that over that time period there. I kind of saw it as short term pain for long term gain. So by doing all those things together, I was able to pay off my mortgage in only about 3 years. And yeah, basically the secret was just making my regular mortgage payments and then making those lump sum payments on top of that, because the beauty of a lump sum payment is that it goes 100% towards principal, unlike a regular mortgage payment that is split between interest and principal. Your extra payments go 100% towards principal. So as an example, if you have a $500,000 mortgage and you make a $2,000 lump sum payment, it's going to bring the balance down to 498, as simple as that there. So really making those extra payments made a world of difference. Just knocking down the balance super fast and being motivated and seeing that balance come down was just really what kept me going. And yeah, like I didn't initially think I could pay it off that quickly. I was aiming for 5 years time, which was when my mortgage was coming up for renewal, but I ended up doing it a lot faster just by through my various side hustles that I was doing. So yeah, that's kind of the Cole's Notes version, and I've written a whole book about it. Not to plug my book or anything like that, but yeah, I wrote my book, Burn Your Mortgage, about that there, and tells my whole story. But yeah, that's just the Cliff's Notes version of it for your audience there.
Yeah, it's brilliant, really, and it's not unattainable, right? For the average Canadian, right? When you went on your job search, you intentionally look for a home in which you could rent out a section of the home, right? That was number one. Number two, you basically concentrated all of your money, all your investable cash into the down payment. So that took a chunk off already. So the mortgage was not as big as it may have been. And then in addition to your full-time job, you intentionally took on side hustles, side gigs, right, to contribute to paying off the mortgage. And as you said, you're eating away at the principal, right? And we'll talk about that type of mortgage later, where you can actually eat away at the principal faster. And I know there's limits to that. And tell me, as soon as the 3 years and 2 months was up, you paid your mortgage off, you had to burn your mortgage party. Tell me about that.
Yes, I wish I had been invited you to that there. I don't know if we knew each other back then, but
Probably
yeah, I had
not.
I guess we didn't know each other back then, but yes, I had a mortgage burning party where CBC was there and filmed the whole thing for CBC, the national. And yeah, originally I wasn't gonna do anything big like that. I'm not somebody who likes attention like that. But when the news said they wanted to do a segment on me, I kind of had to do something more extravagant as that. Like just patting myself on the back wasn't really gonna cut it for the TV. So I decided to have a party with a bunch of my friends and coworkers there, and ended up burning my mortgage papers. And the funny thing that I believe I mentioned in the book there is that it was actually a windy day, like today's maybe not as bad as today, but it was pretty windy there, and I was having a lot of trouble lighting the
Oh
mortgage
yeah,
papers on fire there. So they through the beauty of editing, which similar to podcasts and other things, you can edit it to make it seem more polished. Like yeah, it didn't include the part where I was struggling for about 2-3 minutes to light it on fire. Just like magic, I was able to instantly burn it for the news cameras there. So that's just kind of
that's
a
funny.
funny story that I like to tell. But yeah, that was a great moment. I didn't think it would arrive so soon, but yeah, I was able to do it in a little over 3 years, which definitely was something that I wanted to celebrate there that moment.
Yeah. And I think if people go to YouTube, they type in Sean Cooper, burn your mortgage, they'll probably see that CBC video,
Yes,
and
there's other
they can look it
videos
up.
people have done about me as well that
Yeah,
aren't really affiliated with me, but yeah,
yeah.
other people have talked about my story as well, which is kind of cool.
That's why I wanted you on the show, right? So straight from you, an update on Sean. And the beauty about paying off your mortgage and just burning it off is that, obviously you don't have to worry about a mortgage anymore. But too many Canadians think that, their primary residence is an investment, but really it's not. So you free up capital to make investments in the stock market. You can buy rental properties, et cetera, et cetera. You start a business. And that's really the beauty of it. Tell me about the current situation, Sean. We're in 2024. We're just about to end it. Um, Canadians are hurting, right? In 2024, inflation, high interest rates. The real estate market is not very fluid at all. But just give me like a general sentiment of Canadians, the clients that you're talking to.
Sure. So just from just focusing exclusively on real estate and mortgages,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, definitely people are struggling these days. I mean, the good news is that inflation has come down, but the fact of the matter is, even though the inflation rate is lower, it doesn't erase like all those price increases we got prior to COVID there. Like even though inflation is below 2% for the last while. We kind of got a bit of an uptick there, but mainly below 2%. Like it doesn't, the 5-6% inflation and the higher inflation like that are already baked into the price. So we're not going to see the prices of 2019 or 2020 or anything like that. So yeah, definitely people are finding it tougher these days. And another thing that they're going to have to reckon with is the fact that like a significant number of people's mortgages are coming up for renewal. So we talked about this before the show here, but yeah, over 4 million Canadians' mortgages are coming up for renewal in the next 2 years here. That represents about 60% of the total mortgages that Canadians have coming up for renewals. So yeah, definitely with the higher rates that we have now, it's going to be a wake up call for a lot of Canadians. I mean, the good news is interest rates are coming down. The Bank of Canada has cut interest rates 5 times this year already, representing almost a 2% decline in interest rates, 1.75% to be exact. So definitely helps, but yeah, we're not down to the low interest rates that we were like when COVID happened. So yeah, people are definitely struggling these days. But the good news is there are strategies to help mitigate against the higher interest rates, and I can go a bit into those there for people whose mortgages are coming up for renewal. But yeah, I definitely don't want people to lose their house or anything like that. Canadians are resilient, so they figure out a way to pay their mortgage, but you don't necessarily just need to renew your mortgage and leave it as is. There are strategies that like a mortgage broker like myself can help in terms of making the payments more affordable. So did you want me to go over some of them now with the
Yeah,
listeners?
I just want to highlight that. Like, this is huge. So 60% of mortgages are coming up for renewal in Canada, and the
Yes, not
majority of
16,
these,
60%.
exactly, that's why I said 60, exactly
Mhm.
60, 60, are coming up for renewal. And the majority of these were probably locked in at fixed,
Mhm.
at like rock bottom rates during the pandemic, right? Where
Yes,
people were
exactly.
enjoying some of the lowest payments that, we've ever benefited from in the country. And so this is daunting for a lot of people. So 2025, it could be a little bit of a reckoning. I know, like you said, the Bank of Canada has the lever, and they can continue to ratchet down the overnight rate. If the bond market needs to behave as well. But let's start out with, okay. So let's say someone's mortgage is coming for renewal, or they're going to go looking for a home in 2025 for the very first time. Um, Fixed or variable? What are the pros and cons?
Sure, that's that's probably the most common question
Yeah.
that I get asked. So, yeah, definitely like people were really gun shy about taking variable rate. They really felt burned like over the last few years here because yeah, like the Bank of Canada really like misled Canadians. Like I'm not a big fan of the current governor of the Bank of Canada. I guess I won't be getting a holiday card for from Tiff Macklett or anything like that. But yeah, like I don't think his role to say stuff like, you know, Canadians with mortgages can rest assured that interest rates will remain low for a very long time. Like I'm kind of paraphrasing him there. I don't know his exact quote, but that was pretty much what he said. And then all these people heard him say that, and then they're like, well, the Bank of Canada governor said that, so I'm going to go variable. So we had the situation where many people were in variable rates and were exposed to the huge increases there. So yeah, like definitely the word on the street for a while has been interest rates are heading lower, but many people were hesitant to take variable because they were just burned like from the Bank of Canada last time when they went variable and they saw rates go up at the quickest pace in Canadian history there. But yeah, now that we've seen, like I said, Robin, five interest rate cuts in 2024 here, people are definitely a lot more open to the variable rates and so yeah, I mean, of course, it depends on. It's not just a simple question like fixed or variable. It really depends on several factors, including the stability of your income and all that, and your appetite for risk. There, it's like investing. I mean, you can't just like present the same investment portfolio for everyone. Like there's several factors matter, like your time horizon, your tolerance for risk, your age, stuff of that nature there. So yeah, definitely there are several factors to consider. I would say for the super risk averse people, those folks are signing up for fixed rates. I would say the other like for the super risk averse people that like have the old mindset, they just want to set their mortgage and forget about it. Those folks are some of those folks are still going with the 5 year fixed rate, but I would say the like the 3 and the 4 year have become a lot more popular just because the general consensus is that rates are going to be coming down. So people are trying not to, Canadians are trying not to lock in too long. But yeah, I would definitely say the vast majority of the mortgages that I'm setting up for my clients these days are variable rate mortgages. So for first time home buyers, still they're still leaning towards fixed rate. And again, I provide guidance, but it's their decision at the end of the day. But I generally recommend fixed rate mortgages for first time home buyers, unless they're like really knowledgeable about stuff. Because yeah, it's just when you're buying a property for the first time, as I'm sure you can attest to, Robin, like there are a lot of expenses that you're not used to being a renter living at home, like the utility expenses, the repairs and maintenance, the big one, the property taxes as well. So those expenses there can definitely be a surprise to a first-time home buyer. So I think fixed rate is definitely worth serious consideration if you're a first-time home buyer. And when your mortgage comes up for renewal the first time, then you can consider going to variable once you're more experienced there. But yeah, I would say for the uh, Canadians who are more experienced and who have had mortgages for at least one renewal cycle, variable rate is worth serious consideration because yeah, like a lot of confusion like in the market these days is when they hear like when the average person hears interest rates like the Bank of Canada has cut interest rates by half a percentage point like they did on December 11th, they think okay, great, fixed rates are going down as well. But I'm sure, as you know, Robin, that's not the way that it works. Fixed rates are actually based on the bond market, which is totally separate and apart from the Bank of Canada interest rate. Like, sure, they do oftentimes move in the same direction, but just because the Bank of Canada cuts interest rates by half a point does not mean that fixed rates are magically cut by half a percentage point there. So, yeah, the fact that variable rates have come down considerably. We've seen two half-point interest rate cuts over the last two Bank of Canada announcements there. I definitely think variable rate is worth serious consideration, and I think Canadians are a lot more open to variable rate now that they've seen that Bank of Canada actually follow through and cut interest rates several times here. It's not just talk about interest rates falling. Like I definitely could understand it would be a tough pill to swallow to go variable prior to the first rate cut that we saw in June there, especially after the Bank of Canada ratcheted up rates so quickly. But yeah, now that we've seen five consecutive rate cuts by the Bank of Canada and they've cut rates by a combined 1.75%, I definitely think people are a lot more open to it. So yeah, the majority of mortgages that I'm setting up for my clients are variable these days. But of course, you want to have it's not just the flip of a coin or easy decision. You want to have a discussion with a independent mortgage broker like myself, so that we can go over your personal financial situation, long-term goals. There's so many other things to consider besides just it's not just a simple decision like that. Like, yeah, what do you see the likelihood of you selling your property, buying a new property? Because you have to be careful with the big penalties that can come with fixed rate mortgages, especially with the big banks. So definitely lots of things to consider, and it makes more sense than ever to speak to a independent mortgage broker like myself, because it's not just a matter of looking at the rates and making a decision like, oh, variable's lower than fixed, or fixed is lower than variable, I'm just going to take that. Like there's so many other variables at play. So definitely it makes more sense than ever to speak to a financial professional like myself, who is basically like independent, and it's not my mortgage myself, so I can look at it with clear eyes and help you decide what to do with your mortgage. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your mortgage and you can make the decision with it.
Of
But
course, everyone
definitely,
has unique needs, right, Sean?
I think well said.
Yeah, so there's variable, there's fixed, but when someone goes to one of the big five banks, are all the variable mortgages like actually variable? Do they move with the interest rate decision by our current Bank of Canada Governor Tiff?
Yeah, so the way that it works is there's actually two types of variable mortgages. People, again, I'm not trying to beat up on the media and like the journalists and stuff like that, but like a lot of these folks don't have like financial backgrounds, so they
Yeah,
just don't understand the way that the products work. But that's a
that's
good
why I
way.
ask because you're the expert. So explain so the two types of variable, please.
Yeah, so there's adjustable rate and then there's variable rate mortgages, and all this it can be a bit confusing for the average Canadian, but basically the way that it works is adjustable rate mortgages are the mortgages where your payment adjusts when the Bank of Canada interest rate adjusts. So yeah, just think of it that way. Like your payment adjusts when the Bank of Canada changes interest rates, so it goes up or down. I mean, we've seen it go down over the past several times. Whereas variable rate mortgages with those types of mortgages, the interest rate gets adjusted, but your payment does not get adjusted. It stays the same unless you can go to the lender and request them to manually adjust your payment, but it doesn't typically change except what many people thought, oh, this mortgage is great, the variable rate mortgage. I don't have to worry about my payment going up. I can choose how much extra money I put against my mortgage. But the problem is you can hit something called the trigger point, which many people rudely found out about this when the Bank of Canada jacked up the rate so much. Like basically what happens, the simple version is your payment is staying the same, and because the rates go up so much that your payment isn't even enough to cover the interest portion of your mortgage anymore, so you're forced to pay higher mortgage payments. And that happened to like quite a few people, like when the Bank of Canada was in its interest rate increasing cycle there. But yeah, I would say nowadays, like the variable rate mortgage doesn't make a ton of sense because interest rates are they're not as high as they were, but they're forecasted to keep decreasing. So why would you lock in a payment when interest rates are expected to decline? That product made more sense when rates were lower, so that you could like lock in a payment from a budgeting perspective. But yeah, the term variable rate mortgages is used interchangeably, and yeah, many of the big banks, like the majority of their types of mortgages are variable rate mortgages where your payment does not change. And yeah, I just don't think people really understand the difference between them. There's other downsides to that. Like sure, you from a budgeting standpoint your payment stays the same, but if interest rates are increasing and you don't increase your payment as well, that's extending the amortization of your mortgage, the length of time that it takes to pay off your mortgage in full. So I've heard of some such situations where I've seen firsthand where people's like amortizations were at something crazy like 50 years or 60 years or 70 years. Like definitely there are some odd situations like that, and like you go through a 5-year term and then you don't even end up paying off like really any of the principal at all, and then you face a payment increase at the renewal as well. So those products do make sense in certain circumstances there, but I definitely think the adjustable rate makes a lot more sense, especially since we're in a declining interest rate environment right now.
Knowledge is power, Sean. Thank you. And that's why I asked the question,
Oh, no
is because
problem.
when you walk into a bank and talk to an advisor, they might say variable, and you think, perfect, that's what I want. If rates are coming down, then my variable rate mortgage will go down. But you've got to ask, is it adjustable? Right? You've got to ask these questions. And tell me, Sean, there's some more hacks and questions people can ask when they walk into their bank. For example, there's what's known as a posted rate, the advertised rate. And then the banker, in their back pocket, there's also a concept of discretionary rate. Tell us the difference.
Sure, and again, it reminds me of when my parents went into the bank the first time to take out a mortgage. They had no clue about any of this. I mean, thankfully, there's a lot more knowledge available these days because of people's smartphones and the internet and all that. That's definitely helped Canadians become a lot more knowledgeable. But again, we don't learn about any of this in school, and if your parents aren't homeowners, like you're really left on your own to learn this stuff on your own. So yeah, like as you said, Robin, there's the posted rate, which nobody really takes, but sadly there are some people that actually take the posted rate because they don't know any better than that. But yeah, basically the posted rate is a higher rate that isn't really competitive with most with the offerings there. Like generally the posted rate is like 1 or 2% higher than the competitive mortgage rates out there these days. But yeah, definitely, as long as you're a well qualified borrower, you have good income and good credit and all that, then you should be getting a discount off that there. But yeah, like if you don't ask them, they're not going to offer. So that's really something important, and something also to keep in mind that I mean, not to beat up on the big banks or anything like that. I mean, it's great if you negotiate yourself a good discount and all that there. But something to keep in mind is if you go with a fixed rate mortgage with a big bank, the thing that they don't really tell you about, I mean, it's buried in the fine print, but you pretty much have to be a lawyer to figure this out here is that they actually use, like, if you break your mortgage, they actually use the posted rate against you to calculate how much interest that they're losing on the mortgage to make the mortgage whole. So even though you might be like, great, like I negotiated a better rate, I got a discounted rate over the posted rate, they'll, if you end up breaking your mortgage later on, and I mean, things can change quite a bit. I mean, we're at the end of tail end of 2024 here. I mean, a 5 year term puts us into like 2029, almost 2030. I mean, that's a long time. Like, who knows what life will look like then? But yeah, the kind of secret that they're not telling you, or they're not advertising is that the fixed rate, especially with the big banks, the penalties can be huge. I mean, the biggest penalty I ever saw quoted was over $40,000 for somebody to break a mortgage with a big bank. Like, that's insane. Forty
Forty
thousand
forty
dollars.
thousand dollars.
Yeah, that could be like a down payment on a property. So yeah, like they don't tell you this there, so you really need to be careful. And that's why, again, I'm obviously biased myself, but that's why I'm a big fan of working with a mortgage broker. So I don't work specifically for lenders. I educate people about, like, this lender is good for because they have like if you're looking for a readvanceable mortgage, the big banks can be good for that, which we're going to be talking about later. But if you're concerned about breaking the mortgage, and you think there's a high likelihood of doing that, or there's even a remote chance of doing that, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to go with a fixed rate with the big bank there. So yeah, I kind of tell people how it is. Whereas if you go to the bank, like, it's kind of like pulling teeth. They're not going to volunteer this
No.
information. And the sad reality is, like, many of them just haven't been trained, and they don't even understand the way that this stuff works there, because they're really sales people first. Like, they yeah, they're really all about like selling and meeting quotas, and they're under a lot of pressure to meet sales quotas and all that. So they're like, there's been CBC marketplace specials done on this about how much pressure that the like mortgage specialists and other people who work for the bank are under. So they just, all they do is talk about the rate. They don't talk about all the other factors that matter. Like, the penalty is just as important, if not even more important. The prepayment privileges, portability. There's so many other things to consider, and yeah, like, I just find that is all they do is talk about the rate, and they don't talk about all of that other very important stuff, which I go over with all my clients in great detail, because I don't want one of my clients to come back to me and say, like, plans have changed, Ron. I need to break my mortgage. Like, why didn't you tell me about the big penalty here? Like, I'm surprised the penalty is 20,000 or 25,000. Like, I definitely educate people about my clients about all that stuff up front, so that they can avoid a situation like that, because I don't want
Absolutely. And
anyone
we're
to have.
equipping the people who are viewing this video with this knowledge now, right? And as you said, the big five banks are not the only game in town. That's why it's good to go to someone like you, a broker who has access to other lenders out there. And the way I see, signing up for a mortgage is when you walk into a car dealership, you're not going to pay the listed price that's on the windshield of the car. You're going to negotiate, and the salesperson is going to go up to the finance guy, who's a little bit elevated on the counter there at the back of the dealership, and ask for a little bit of better price. But the point is, you don't pay for the posted rate. So tell me about that strategy. I know that when you signed up for your mortgage in the house that you paid after 3 years and 2 months, you had privileges, right? And you requested those in your mortgage where you could pay down your principal. Tell us about that.
Yes, so the key thing that enabled me to do that was I had very generous prepayment privileges. Again, not to beat up on the big banks, but they can be very stingy with the prepayment privileges. Like, many of them only let you do lump sum payments once a year on your mortgage anniversary date. So basically, if you have like a whack of money, like, you basically have to hold on to it and wait until your mortgage anniversary date. That could be months away, a year away, or something like that, and you're incurring interest in all of that time period there. So I went with a lender who had very flexible prepayment privileges. The lender's name was First National, and people like First National, like, more people that I speak to these days are familiar with them. But there's two main categories of lenders out there. There's the five or big six banks. There's the banks and the credit unions. I like lumping them into one category together. And then there's another category of lenders. They go by several different names, but like the technical name for them is monoline lender because they just deal in one line of business, mortgages. But if I say monoline lender to my clients, their eyes are probably going to glaze over and they're not going to understand what that means there. And even for me, it's a bit confusing. But yeah,
It's a
like I
better
like
term than B lender, right? Which
yes,
is usually what people call B lender if it's not one of the big six or the big
yeah,
five or including the
technically.
credit unions.
Yeah, technically it's not. They're not B lenders. What I like to call them is online lenders. That's the name that I've went with because I just think it's a better description
Hmm.
of them. Because yeah, they don't have physical bank branches, most of them, but because they don't have all of the overhead costs of the big bank, they're able to pass along the savings to you in the form of more competitive interest rates, as well as a lot more flexible terms and conditions. So unlike the big banks where they may only let you make lump sum payments once a year, they're very flexible. Like you can put as little as usually $100 a lump sum payment against the mortgage. So if you have a bit of extra money here and there, you can toss it against the mortgage, and their penalties are also calculated in a significantly fairer way than the big banks. So yeah, that's why it's very important to like if you like for example if you were going to follow up on your car dealership example there, Robin, like if somebody was going to buy a car at a car lot, like they wouldn't buy a car like for example if you were buying a car tomorrow, Robin, like would you just buy a car based on the sticker price and not look at anything else, like the color of the car, not look at the safety of the car, any of the features? Like nobody would do that. Like you'd end up driving off in an old clunker lemon that probably is like lime green or something like that. So the same thing is with mortgages. Like everyone wants a competitive mortgage rate, but it's so important to look at the features and the penalties and other stuff like that of the mortgage because yeah, like again, like buying a car or planning a vacation, like nobody would just do that based solely on the cost of it there. It's definitely very important to look at the other features there so that you don't end up getting burned later on. So yeah, the great thing about a mortgage broker like myself is we have exclusive access to the online lenders. You can't apply directly at an online lender
Mm.
yourself because their business model is working directly through mortgage brokers so that their
Hmm.
overhead cost is lower since they don't have to hire like huge sales force staffs like the big bank. So yeah, they basically pass the savings along to you in the form of, like I said, better overall mortgage products. So yeah, you get that when you work with a mortgage broker like myself.
Great. And so let's come up with more questions that people need to ask. What are the questions that someone needs to ask of their financial advisor or their mortgage broker before they sign on the dotted line?
Sure. So I could probably go on for half an hour about this here, but yeah, definitely, I would get a second opinion. Like, but if you're going directly to the bank, definitely get a second opinion. And I mean, in a perfect world, you'd initially go to a mortgage broker. But yeah, if you're still going with the bank and you've gotten an offer there, definitely it's prudent to speak with an independent mortgage broker because, like I said, I went to the bank myself. I had that experience of being at the bank and asking for a mortgage there, and yeah, like I just find that, of course, there's people who are better than others, but the vast majority of my experience has been I just find that all the bank does is talk about the rate, and they don't educate you about any of the features of the mortgage. So yeah, I would just uh, again, you could ask the big bank, the mortgage specialist there about the penalties, but unfortunately, they're just not well trained in this here. So I would definitely get a second opinion with a mortgage broker and have them educate you and go over examples with this about this here because you could ask them the big banks questions about how their penalties work, but the fact of the matter is I just find that they don't do a very good job of explaining it there. But yeah, definitely.
Got it. So the point then, Sean, is that basically you can ask some tough questions, but they might not be able to tell you. They might
Exactly.
not know how to answer. So let's bust a myth, Sean. So most people think, okay, I should go straight to one of the big five banks, talk to an advisor because I don't want to pay my mortgage broker. But let's bust that myth. Do you charge the homeowner?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, there unfortunately there are myths out there, but yeah, basically the way I like explaining it to my clients, nice and simple, is taking a mortgage out through a mortgage broker is the exact same as working with a realtor when you're buying a property. So when you're buying a property, there's no direct cost to yourself. You're not paying the realtor like an hourly rate every time you're looking at properties with them. You're not paying them anything when the property closes. So the same idea, it's the same idea with a mortgage broker. You don't have to pay me anything for my services. You're getting the benefits of a mortgage broker, somebody who is knowledgeable about mortgages in your corner. You're getting exclusive access to a whole host of lenders that you normally wouldn't. The online lenders, which are superior, in my opinion, to the big bank, and it's not costing you anything extra. As a mortgage broker, once I submit the mortgage application for you, then and the mortgage closes, I get paid by the lender, but there's no extra cost to you. And the way like explaining it as with the online lenders, they and I work with the big banks as well, but basically since I'm introducing a client directly to these lenders, they don't have to spend money on marketing and advertising. So the money that they would have spent on the marketing and advertising, like online ads, like newspaper if they still do that these days, but billboards, stuff like that, they don't need to spend as much money on that. So that's saving them money. So that money that they're not spending on the marketing, they're able to uh, pay pay me and compensate me, but it doesn't cost you anything extra, and you're getting a mortgage expert in your corner who can pretty much tell you as it is, unbiased opinion, as opposed to going to the bank where like unfortunately a lot of these folks don't really understand like anything about their products, and all they know how to do is quote you a rate. So definitely I'm confident that like you get a better overall experience with a mortgage broker, and that's really what encouraged me to become a mortgage broker like myself. Because when I took out my mortgage, I originally went to the banks like most people, and I didn't get a really good experience. They couldn't answer basic questions about the mortgage, and then I connected with a mortgage broker who I was referred to buy, and I had an amazing experience with him. So I ended up taking the mortgage out through him, and that's what encouraged me to become a mortgage broker myself.
Thanks, Sean. Okay, so it was relatively easy for us to buy our first homes, right?
Oh,
This was, let's say 10 years ago, 10 years plus. Um, Today it's a lot tougher because real estate prices across the board in Canada have gone way up. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone who's just graduating university. They're, let's say 22 or 23. They land a full-time job. They're thinking, how the hell do I, get a mortgage, let alone save up for a down payment? Um, how do you do it? What are some strategies?
sure. So yeah, there's that's a great question there, Robin. And yeah, there are definitely different strategies they could do. Like I realize that not everyone is has this option here, but and it may not be the most exciting option, but if you can continue to live at home as long as you can, and you can make an arrangement with your parents just so that you're on the same page and nobody is upset. But yeah, like you can live at home rent free, or contribute money towards like expenses of the property, do chores, like you can make some sort of arrangement or pay like a below market rent, like in different households and different cultures, like it's different. But yeah, living at home is definitely cheaper than like renting your own place. That's one option. Another option is if that's not feasible for you, which I realize it's not necessarily an option for everyone, you could take in roommates, which is definitely an option that a lot of younger folks take. I mean, I understand having your own freedom and having your own place can be a good thing to have, but by just buckling down, like if you want to own a property, by buckling down and taking in a roommate or two, it can really help you get ahead in the real estate market. So that's another option there. And yeah, just being careful with your spending. Like when you graduate, this is the first time that you have a full-time job, and yeah, you just don't want to blow all your money and find that like 5 years passes and you don't have anything to show for it. So I'm a big fan of paying yourself first. So what that means is just setting yourself a goal. Like I like reverse engineering things, and this is what I do with first time home buyers that I work with who aren't necessarily at the point of having the down payment money. Basically, like I ask them like, when do you want to own a property, and then they tell me 2 3 years, and then we reverse engineer like, okay, well you want to own a property in this city or town, like Ottawa as an example, like what type of property do you want to get into? A condo or a townhouse as a starter? Great, like that goes for maybe $400,000 or $500,000. I'm just making up some figures, but then we figure out like what kind of minimum down payment that they would need, and then how much they would need to save from each paycheck. That definitely is a lot easier to come up with rather than basically saying like, oh, like I've got to come up with like 50 60 thousand dollars in a 2 3 years time. That can be definitely be a lot more, be intimidating. Whereas when you kind of break it down and figure out like I've got to save, I don't know, like 100 150 from each paycheck, whatever the number is. Like I definitely think 100 or 150 from each paycheck rather than 50 or 60,000 is definitely a lot more achievable and a less intimidating number. So yeah, that definitely is helpful. And I think the bank of mom and dad definitely plays. Again, not everyone's fortunate enough to be in this
Yep.
position, but I definitely think that the bank of mom and dad, I've seen firsthand, it's played like a lot bigger role in uh, like first time home buyers getting into the market, just because the real estate markets have the prices have gone up like so much in the last few years here. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a gift from parents. There's a couple of different ways that they can help you. So of course they can give you down payment money. A second way, which like many people are in the financial position to do that because maybe they didn't have good pension plans at work and they need the money for their retirement. So another way they can help you is by co-signing on the mortgage. Now it's important when you have a parent co-sign to understand that they're fully responsible for the mortgage if you don't make the mortgage payments, and they can have their credit history damaged. So it's important to have that conversation up front. But those are definitely some good options to consider doing
Yeah, but
because that,
for people like you and I, Sean, like we never, tapped the bank of mom and dad, right? We didn't have that option. And so there is support though from the government. Tell me about government incentives for first time and young home buyers.
yeah, they've definitely made it they've definitely made it easier to get into the market. There was an incentive program. It was like basically the technical term is shared equity program, but the government actually ended that program several months back. It was just a poorly thought out program. Like, unfortunately, I don't mean to speak poorly of the government, but it seems like they just write these ideas on the back of a napkin and don't consult with the industry at all, and then the policies make no sense because that program was good for more affordable markets. Like, again, I'm not trying to insult people here, but like, Calgary or Edmonton or Winnipeg or Saskatoon, like markets like that. But if the numbers doesn't the numbers doesn't make sense in an expensive market like Toronto or Vancouver. So that incentive program did get discontinued, but there has been some changes in the mortgage rules in the last several months here that have made it easier for first-time home buyers to get into the market. So, for example, if you're a first-time home buyer, you can you can take out a 30-year mortgage to start instead of just 25 years. So it makes the payments that much more affordable and it makes it easier to qualify for the mortgage. The second change is that if this was left at like $1 million for insured mortgage for a very long time, like a decade, like something like that, and it was never changed. Finally, the government has increased the purchase price on insured mortgage, which means when you're putting less than 20% down on a property, they've increased that finally to $1.5 million. The funny thing is the industry was asking for 1.25 and they went even higher than that there. So definitely helps because imagine like buying in an expensive market like Toronto or Vancouver. Like if you want to buy a house for $1 million, that means you had to put 20% down. That's $200,000. Like imagine that, Robin. Like how is somebody supposed to come up with a $200,000 down payment? Like if you're moving up in the market and home prices have gone up, like that's possible for those folks, but for people buying for the first time, unless you have a big gift from the bank of mom and dad, that's just not possible. So definitely having insured mortgage purchase price going from a million to 1.5 million, I definitely think has helped quite a bit. I mean, the income to qualify for a 1.5 million dollar insured mortgage is pretty crazy. You need like a household income over 300,000